Welcome back to the channel XRP On Moon, your go-to place for the latest, most important, and sometimes urgent updates in the world of XRP. Today's video is not just another update. This is something you seriously cannot afford to ignore because what I'm about to share with you could impact your XRP holdings in the next 24 hours. Yes, you heard that right, 24 hours. Right now, something unusual is happening in the XRP ecosystem, and it's not the kind of movement that shows up clearly on the surface. Behind the scenes, there are signals building up, signals that experienced investors and institutional players are watching very closely. If you're holding XRP, even a small amount, you need to understand what's going on before the rest of the market wakes up to it. Over the past few days, we've started to notice a shift, not just in price action, but in behavior. XRP is no longer moving in its typical pattern. The volatility structure is changing, liquidity flows are tightening, and there's a growing sense that something bigger is quietly taking shape. This isn't random noise. This is usually how major moves begin. Big money doesn't announce itself when it enters a position. It doesn't create headlines first. It accumulates silently, positions strategically, and waits. Then, when everything aligns, the market reacts, fast and aggressively. And right now, all signs suggest that XRP could be entering that exact phase. What makes this even more critical is the timing. The next 24 hours are being watched very closely because this could be the window where multiple factors come together, whether it's a sudden surge in buying pressure, a key development related to Ripple's global operations, or a shift in overall market sentiment. Something is building, and it could trigger a rapid reaction. The reality is, when XRP decides to move, it doesn't move slowly. It tends to catch people off guard, especially those who are waiting for confirmation or clear signals. Most retail investors fall into the same trap. They wait for the news to become obvious, they wait for the price to already move, and by the time they act, the opportunity has already passed them by. Meanwhile, the smart money positions itself early when things are still uncertain and quiet. That's exactly the phase we might be in right now. So the real question you need to ask yourself is, are you prepared for what could happen next? Because in this video, I'm going to break everything down for you in a clear and simple way, helping you understand what's happening behind the scenes, why this 24-hour window matters, and what it could mean for your XRP holdings moving forward. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear might completely change the way you look at XRP in the short term. Now let's take this a step further and really understand what's driving this sense of urgency around XRP right now. Because this isn't just about price speculation or random hype. There are deeper fundamentals quietly developing beneath the surface. At the center of all this is Ripple, a company that has spent years building infrastructure for global payments, not for retail traders, but for banks, financial institutions, and cross-border transaction networks. While most of the crypto market has been focused on short-term gains and trends, Ripple has been playing a completely different game. A long-term strategy aimed at transforming how money moves across borders. And XRP is a core part of that system. What makes this particularly interesting right now is the growing evidence that Ripple's network expansion is accelerating. New partnerships, new corridors, and increased adoption of its on-demand liquidity solution are starting to gain traction in regions where traditional banking systems are slow, expensive, and outdated. This matters because XRP isn't just a speculative asset in this context. It's being used as a bridge currency, meaning real transactions depend on it to move value quickly and efficiently. And when real-world usage increases, demand dynamics start to change in a very different way compared to hype-driven price movements. Now here's where things become even more critical. There's rising speculation that some high-volume payment corridors could either be activated or expanded very soon. These are not small developments. We're talking about channels that could process significant transaction volume on a daily basis. If that happens, it could create a sudden increase in XRP usage behind the scenes, and the market often reacts to that kind of shift with very little warning. This is exactly why the next 24 hours are being highlighted. It's not necessarily about a single announcement dropping at a specific time, but rather a convergence of factors that could reach a tipping point. At the same time, the broader crypto market is sitting at a very sensitive stage. Investors are uncertain, capital is rotating, and many are actively looking for the next major opportunity. XRP has always had the ability to move independently when a strong catalyst appears, especially when it's tied to real utility or institutional involvement. And right now, the conditions are aligning in a way that suggests something could break out of this current quiet phase. Another important angle to consider is how information flows in markets like this. By the time major news becomes widely available, it's often already priced in. The real advantage comes from understanding the signals before they become headlines. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. Subtle but meaningful developments that haven't fully reached the broader public yet. This creates a narrow window where awareness becomes extremely valuable. Because once momentum begins, it tends to accelerate quickly, and those who were early are the ones who benefit the most from that move. So when you hear that there may be only 24 hours to pay attention, it's not about panic. It's about awareness. It's about recognizing that markets move in phases, and sometimes the transition from quiet accumulation to explosive movement happens faster than most people expect. And if XRP is truly approaching that transition phase, then what happens next could be far more significant than what most investors are currently anticipating. Now let's focus on something that most people are completely missing right now, and that is positioning. Because in markets like this, positioning often tells you more than price ever will. While retail investors are busy watching charts, reacting to small price movements, and debating whether XRP is going up or down, larger players are quietly doing something very different. They are positioning themselves ahead of a potential move. And if you look closely at wallet behavior and transaction patterns across the XRP ledger, there are subtle but important shifts taking place. These are not random transactions or emotional trades. They appear structured, measured, and strategic. This kind of activity typically reflects accumulation, and historically, accumulation phases tend to happen before major price expansions. It's during these quiet periods that smart money builds its position, while the majority of the market either loses interest or remains uncertain. What makes this even more interesting is the pace at which this positioning is happening. It's not aggressive, it's not obvious, and that's exactly the point. When large entities enter a market, they avoid creating sudden spikes that attract attention. Instead, they spread their entries over time, allowing them to accumulate without significantly moving the price. And right now, XRP seems to be in that exact kind of environment, like a controlled, low-noise phase where something is building beneath the surface. This doesn't guarantee an immediate breakout, but it does increase the probability that a larger move is being prepared. Another critical factor tied to this is liquidity, because liquidity is what ultimately drives price movement. Without liquidity, even strong demand can struggle to push prices higher. But when liquidity conditions begin to tighten and then suddenly expand, it creates the perfect setup for rapid and sometimes explosive moves. At the moment, there are indications that XRP's liquidity environment is shifting. Order books are behaving differently, volumes are stabilizing in a way that suggests preparation rather than randomness, and this often happens just before a significant change in market direction. It's almost like the market is coiling, waiting for a trigger. And this is where the psychological side of the market becomes extremely important. Most investors operate based on emotion, fear when prices drop, and greed when prices rise. But during phases like this, the market thrives on uncertainty. It creates doubt, hesitation, and indecision. And that hesitation is exactly what allows larger players to move freely without interference. By the time confidence returns to the market, the price has usually already moved, leaving late participants chasing momentum instead of benefiting from it. Right now, XRP holders are sitting in that exact moment of uncertainty. There's no clear breakout yet, no confirmed catalyst that everyone agrees on, and that's what makes this phase so critical. Because the absence of clarity often precedes the arrival of opportunity. And when that opportunity reveals itself, it rarely gives advance notice. It moves quickly, forcing decisions in real time. So if you're holding XRP, this is not the time to switch off or become passive. This is the time to stay alert, to pay attention to the small signals that others are ignoring, and to understand that positioning is already happening whether the broader market recognizes it or not. Because if this build-up phase transitions into momentum within the next 24 hours, the move could happen faster than most people are prepared for. And by the time it becomes obvious, the advantage of being early will already be gone. Now this is where everything starts to intensify, because beyond positioning and liquidity, there is one factor that has the power to change the entire narrative around XRP almost instantly, and that is regulation. For a long time, uncertainty around Ripple and its legal standing has acted as a weight on XRP's growth, holding back not just price action, but also large-scale institutional participation. Institutions don't operate on hype, they operate on clarity. They need clear rules, defined frameworks, and a level of certainty before committing serious capital. And for XRP, that clarity has been slowly developing in the background. Now imagine a scenario where that uncertainty begins to fade, even slightly. It doesn't need to be a complete resolution. Even a small positive shift in regulatory perception can act as a powerful catalyst. Because the moment institutions feel more confident about entering the space, the flow of capital can increase rapidly. And unlike retail investors, institutional money doesn't move in small amounts. When it enters, it creates pressure, momentum, and a ripple effect across the entire market. This is exactly why the current moment feels so critical. There are growing discussions, increasing attention, and a sense that the environment around XRP is evolving. And when you combine that with everything we've already discussed, accumulation, liquidity shifts, and expanding real-world utility, you start to see a bigger picture forming. It's not just one factor pointing toward a potential move, it's multiple layers aligning at the same time. And in financial markets, when multiple catalysts begin to converge, the outcome is often far more powerful than any single factor alone. Another key element you need to understand is momentum, because momentum is what turns a normal move into an explosive one. Markets don't simply rise because of good news. They rise because that news triggers participation. Traders jump in, volume increases, algorithms react, and suddenly the move feeds on itself. XRP has a history of doing exactly this. It stays quiet for extended periods, building pressure, and then when momentum finally kicks in, the price can accelerate much faster than people expect. This creates a situation where hesitation becomes costly. The longer someone waits for confirmation, the higher the chance they enter late. Right now, XRP appears to be sitting right at the edge of that potential momentum shift. It hasn't broken out yet, but the conditions are starting to look very similar to previous phases where large moves began. And if a catalyst, whether it's regulatory, institutional, or utility-driven, enters the picture within this narrow time window, it could act as the spark that ignites everything. This brings us back to the idea of the next 24 hours. It's not about predicting an exact event down to the minute, but about recognizing that markets often move during very specific windows where everything aligns. And those windows don't stay open for long. When they close, the move has already happened, and the opportunity to act early disappears. So at this stage, the most important thing is awareness. Not panic, not emotional decision-making, but clear awareness of what's unfolding. Because if XRP transitions from this quiet buildup into an active momentum phase, it could happen quickly, and it could catch a lot of people off guard. And the only ones who won't be surprised are the ones who were paying attention before the move began. As we bring everything together, it's important to step back and look at the full picture, because what's happening with XRP right now is not just about a single headline or one isolated event. It's about a combination of factors that are slowly aligning at the same time. We've talked about positioning, where larger players appear to be quietly accumulating while the majority of the market remains uncertain. We've looked at liquidity conditions that suggest the market may be preparing for a shift. We've discussed the growing utility side driven by Ripple and its expanding global payment network. And finally, we've touched on the possibility of regulatory clarity acting as a powerful catalyst. When you put all of these elements together, you start to see why this current moment feels so critical. Now, does this guarantee that XRP will explode within the next 24 hours? No. And it's important to stay grounded in reality. Markets are unpredictable, and no one can promise exact outcomes. But what we can do is recognize when probabilities begin to shift. And right now, the probability of a significant move, whether it's immediate or building very soon, appears to be increasing. This is the kind of phase where being informed gives you an edge, where understanding the bigger picture helps you avoid emotional decisions, and where preparation matters more than reaction. If you are holding XRP, this is not the time to be distracted or disconnected from the market. It's the time to stay aware, to watch how things unfold, and to think strategically rather than emotionally. Too many investors make the mistake of chasing green candles after the move has already started, or panic selling during uncertainty, only to regret it later. The goal here is not to predict perfectly, but to position yourself intelligently based on what the market is showing you right now. Because here's the truth. Opportunities in the crypto market don't come with clear warnings. They don't wait for everyone to be ready. They appear suddenly, move quickly, and reward those who are paying attention early. And while the phrase "you have 24 hours" might sound intense, it really represents something deeper, a narrow window of awareness where being informed can make all the difference. So as you move forward from this video, keep your focus sharp, watch the market, follow the developments, and most importantly, stay disciplined in your approach. Don't let hype control your decisions, and don't ignore the signals that could matter. XRP has always been an asset that moves when least expected, and if this current setup turns into action, it could happen faster than most people are prepared for. Before we end, I want to leave you with an important reminder. This content is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. The cryptocurrency market, including XRP, is highly volatile and involves significant risk. Prices can move rapidly in either direction, and you should always do your own research and, if needed, consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Never invest more than you can afford to lose. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to stay connected with XRP on Moon, because in a market like this, timing, awareness, and the right information can make all the difference.